next week, you are going to have an opportunity. You see, my mother is going to be with us. And, yeah, I saw that look. Think of all the stories that you can tell her.
Yes.
Or even more to the point, all the stories you can ask her about. But her being with us is kind of fraught on another level, because not only is she going to be here with her boyfriend, but I'm going to have to leave immediately after the service, and I'm not going to be here to chaperone her. You see, I've got a wedding to go to, and it's not a family wedding, it's a wedding of a friend from New Jersey, and so, it's going to be, hugs and kisses at the church door, bye, and I'll see you in a couple months kind of thing. Weddings are disruptive. You might be planning on sticking around and visiting with folks, but they draw you away. They make you make other plans. Back in June, I had to drive down to Virginia for my niece's wedding. And of course, here we are at the end of August, and wedding season is kind of drawing to a close. Now, I'm sure you've been to more than your share of weddings over the years, that you have gone to those receptions. I remember a wedding about a year ago when Christian was arranging everything at the wedding hall where he works, and I was performing a wedding for the son and daughter of one of my nurses from the hospital. Figure that one out. It's a lot of mixed up relationships. Well, as the bridal party was getting ready to walk into the hall, the bride's mother, who she is not married, and so she was there, and she was getting ready to walk in by herself, and she looked over and said, no, you walk in with me. and Maria, she's a great lady, and of course I said yes. She and I have been friends for a couple of years, and I was happy to walk in next to her, though I have to admit that it's kind of awkward feeling to be announced by the DJ as we walk in. It's like, no, I was just the officiant. I'm not part of the wedding party. You're not here to celebrate me. Fortunately, though, when it was time to sit down, I didn't have to sit at the head table with the bride and groom, because that would have been just too much. But I was sitting there with Maria and with several other folks from the hospital, and we got to share stories and enjoy our time together. I'm so glad I didn't get seated at the head table. That actually happened to me at a wedding once, and was perhaps one of the most mortifying things. Not my own wedding. We didn't even have a head table at my own wedding. That was one of those stand-up reception affairs where you could get, a ham biscuit, and maybe some shrimp and cocktail sauce, and that was about it. But where we're seated makes a difference, doesn't it? I mean, if someone seats us up at that head table, we feel like we should be the center of attention, even if maybe we really wish that we weren't. And if we get to sit with the normal people, it's a bit more comfortable and easy, isn't it? We can, loosen our ties. We can maybe hang our jacket on the back of the chair instead of feeling like we have to stay all buttoned up for the whole thing. I know at least at weddings, that's always one of my personal missions, is taking off the jacket to make it okay for everybody else. I am the casualizer, if that's a word. Jesus was talking to his disciples and to a crew of other folks who were listening in when he was dining at the house of a Pharisee. And he was looking out at the people coming in for the meal and watching where they seated themselves. Watching some of the folks who made sure that they sat up at the very best seats at the head of the table where the host was, rather than filtering down to the lower and less prominent seats. We don't tend to seat people by rank and degree in our culture so much. That's much more of a European thing, and probably even a thing of bygone days, where people would be seated by literal societal ranks. So the king would sit higher than a duke, who would sit higher than, maybe a military officer who would sit higher than somebody else. And the dividing line, of course, was where the salt was placed on the table. And so if you were above the salt, you were in tall cotton, and if you were below the salt, well, it wasn't exactly an insult, but you didn't rate as highly as those on the upstream end. And Jesus, he's telling his listeners, when they go to a banquet, don't seat yourself above the salt. Don't try and take that seat of honor. Don't look for people to say, oh, wow, aren't they important? They're sitting so close to the host. Instead, he says, seat yourself at the seat of least honor, so that your host, seeing where you are, might say to you, come, move up to a better seat, rather than being told, get your butt out of that chair, there's someone important who's supposed to be sitting there. Right? It's good, practical, social advice for its day. And probably if you're silly enough to go and seat yourself at the head table at a wedding banquet without being scheduled to sit there, you understand, you're going to have somebody come up and suggest that you might want to sit elsewhere. But Jesus wasn't just giving social advice. He wasn't just sort of doing the whole Mr. Manners thing. He was really trying to instill a deeper meaning. Talking to us about how we value our own dignity, how we value our honor and our importance. Telling us, get over yourselves, people. Of course, he didn't say it that way, but that's what he's telling us. And it's something we all need to hear, myself included. Get over yourselves, people. Don't think that you have to try and show everybody else that you're important, because you are. Don't think that you have to make other people sit below you as a sign of how great you are. Because if you do that, then you're probably going to get knocked down a couple of pegs. Instead, recognize that all of those people who are surrounding you in your life are sisters and brothers, are people for whom you have responsibility. That's really what was being discussed in the Epistle to the Hebrews as well, when Paul wrote and told the early church, pay attention to what's going on with other people. If other people are being tortured, then realize that you yourselves are being tortured as well. Realize that the misfortune of any of God's children is a misfortune that you're involved in. That you can't say, oh, I'm fine. Let those people take care of themselves. No. We're all together. And when one suffers, all suffer. As Christians in the 21st century, particularly as Christians in the United States in the 21st century, particularly as Christians in the northeast of the United States in the 21st century, where things are, if I may say so, pretty darn good. We have a responsibility for those who are not doing so well. A responsibility to look out for our sisters and brothers in Louisiana, those who are recovering from the floods. A responsibility to our sisters and our brothers in Italy, recovering from an earthquake. A responsibility to our sisters and brothers in Syria, still fleeing violence and oppression. Our responsibility goes beyond what we can see in our own church or in our own community. It's global. Of course we know that, don't we? How many times have we gotten together to hear the words of Jesus reminding us of our call to love? Calling us once more to faithful action towards sisters and brothers and not just towards self-interest. Our calling is indeed a high one, but it's also a hard one, because it calls us to walk in discomfort. It calls us to set aside our own privilege and to understand what other people are going through. It calls us to listen with ears that are attuned to other people's pain. Now, I don't want to get all Pollyanna and suggest that our lives are perfect. If your life is perfect, talk to me after church. I want to use you as a poster child. We all have our challenges. We all have our pains. But that's part of being in it together. Because when we lift up others, when we take on the concerns of others, there are those who take on our concerns as well. Those who say to us in our lowliness, no, move up. Let us help you. Let us draw you closer to God as well. You see, that's how it works in that great give and take of caring for one another. None of us is ever alone. For whether we seat ourselves below the salt and are brought up, or seat ourselves above the salt and are brought down, we find that ultimately we meet at that point where all of God's children care for one another. Let us then today and each day open our hearts for that transformation. Open our hearts for that growing awareness of who we are as God's children and as sisters and brothers. Not only to those who are like us and who live near us, but for all of our sisters. And as we do so, may we be blessed and may we be transformed. Amen.